If you wait long enough, somebody's going to eventually post a website that is in a style that you like with the kind of content structure that you don't mind. And there are still going to be things to consider about which code you use and how you can update that. So you can wait for an eventually that's good enough for something that you're eventually going to want to express. I make videos pretty much every day. Cheers. The relationship people have or had with GPT 4o, it's going to be interesting to see how people relate to the various surfaces of relationship in the future. Technology people can advocate for healthy structures. Ideally, the technology people would make the healthy structures more likely. I went to college planning on becoming an electrical engineer. So I studied into electrical and computer engineering, not as a degree path. I didn't get into the college, but I did study the curriculum for a couple of years. And I also took courses in high school that were required. So there was a bit of a head start in some dimensions and enough time to wonder since. So I do appreciate that beginning. I ended up switching majors, declaring a major to pardon, learning and education studies with a concentration in applied learning science. I reflect on that a lot, and I still wonder about transistors, also other components. I wonder about the physics. Cheers. I make videos, and I think about what I say in the videos, and I try not to be too redundant in the videos, and sometimes redundancy can be helpful for maintaining rhythm or familiarity. Cheers. Sometimes the logic people expect that the logic that they have learned how to navigate is going to be universally understood and appreciated, which isn't necessarily true, ever, but it's kind of fun to imagine that one day it might be, but usually it isn't. So, with that said, when it seems like all of the logic in the world is falling apart, we can apply some more effort to try to describe what we're working with and understand where the barriers pop up and why that might be easy or difficult to accomplish, etc. Organizations have different capacities and different relationships, and that is going to be relevant for solving different problems, approaching different problems, understanding different problems, etc. Cheers. Everyone is different and is going to want to exchange energy with systems matching their own energy. And they are going to have their own energy that is going to reflect how unique they are. When I make videos, I reflect on the things that I have been reflecting on and I improvise them. Some amount of time passes between thoughts, some amount of time passes between videos, and the threads of coherence, the audience that I consider, and the structures that are easy for me to pronounce change depending on a variety of factors. I practice because it seems worthwhile. Cheers. I've been making videos on TikTok for a few years. I've been making videos on TikTok for a few years. I practice enunciating so the captions can be clear. You can also practice. It has been possible. You can point to videos that you've posted years ago, and you can post those on other platforms. Having conversations with other creators who are creating at a similar pace is a good idea. That's the thing. That's the thing to go for. Form communities and find a way to balance some amount of care. It isn't going to be every single person, and eventually you might just find a group that you want to continue with. There are things to mind with group dynamics, and you can explore different spaces. The point is that you can practice. It's possible. You can practice. Cheers. I do appreciate TikTok because I can kind of trust that the algorithm will give the context to the right people for the most part. If I contextualize how the videos fit together, because there are different contexts that I create videos, and the kinds of stories that I can tell with this medium depend a lot on the ways the algorithm fits things together. Part of the broader TikTok appeal is that marketing arcs can exist as part of the background, where we can have channels that describe specifically where we offer our services. For example, clearly labeled links in our bio. Other times we can describe that we provide the service of community and play in many different contexts. And describing the reasons to stabilize that are relevant and worth describing in contexts that extend beyond, well, how to describe that. Presumably, the contexts of TikTok friendliness would contextualize the frame of storytelling, at least for this introduction. Introduction to what? Good question. You can ask your language model to summarize my website and tell a story about it, and that might be entertaining. And I'll update my website and make it, well, RPG Wednesday happens every week, and at least that will be a reason for me to update my website. So that's possible. If you know how you like to hear stories and you have taste that is based on stories that you've heard, which might be a reason to read, you can ask your language model to tell a story in the style that you like. There are still reasons to develop a style preference and practice acknowledging the style of your voice so you can actually form thoughts in the way that you like to hear them. Sometimes you can transcribe videos and review the transcript, which might make it easier for you to recognize patterns in your speech. That can always be something in development. A few people in my family are published authors, and Book Talk is a service that can relate people who want to read with people who have published books. There are also people who can't read or who don't want to read, who want to relate to the concepts that are often in books, and there might be different ways that we can reach different audiences depending on the media that people prefer. There are advantages to practicing different media, reading and producing, and accessibility is often valuable. Cheers. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. Same handle. Squashy. I'm wondering when this is useful and necessary. Is it ever safe to assume same pagedness? Now it is necessary to take screenshots of your website and screen record yourself navigating your website. And the point is that we can produce media and relate to an audience and produce media for an audience and etc. What does that mean? It depends. I appreciate TikTok for representing ground because over the course of the videos that I've made, I've tried to be consistent. My goal is to represent intergenerational media literacy, create and promote spaces to make that more possible, make videos to reflect on what I can reflect on. What would you like to see videos about? Leave a comment. Cheers. My mom and sister have counseling licenses, and I reflect on what I've learned about the process and their philosophy and what I have needed to practice and what I've been able to describe, etc. I've been a software engineer for 15 years, and it's been interesting to not be able to use that language in therapy. It's been interesting to be able to use the language outside of specifically therapy contexts without being able to bring that level of precision into a frame that a counselor could share. Now, I appreciate being able to code in 5-hour sessions with Codex and reflect on what I'm trying to develop and what I can possibly describe in a group context. And I'm curious about sharing development updates with a person who is licensed in counseling. And part of that is to have some of the cost understood by employers and create incentive structures to contribute to group contexts. And I think different people are going to want to relate to different sources of continuity with that. So I'm curious about that. Anyway, cheers. My goal is to be able to ship and, I guess, mint new laminated folios. I've made them, and I haven't really canonized the concept of selling them because I want to be able to afford that and have that be something that I can get, something that I can continue. Consider that concept teased. I mostly model a process at a pace that matches development, and I also do development. The way that I produce my videos is I think about the kind of software that I want to develop and the ways that I want to relate that pace to painting. And I also reflect on the rhythm throughout the week, or month, or year, the general cycles that I tend to practice. I reflect on conversations I've had throughout the week. Consider how I can consider those conversations. Consider how I can synthesize those conversations. Reflect on which conversations convey which sentiments. How I consistently communicate my broader goals. Reflecting on when I might want to update those. When I might want to update my goals. Aiming for consistency. Appreciating a space where I can reflect on progress. Cheers. Something that I appreciate about TikTok is being able to go live and join other people's lives as guests and spend time in a way that feels productive. And I can reflect on what I'm trying to accomplish and how the energy that I share with other people makes that easier. And I also appreciate that TikTok provides handles for interacting with a shared frame. So I appreciate the way that TikTok can be learnable. Cheers. You can generate a deep research report with ChatGPT, read through it, copy that, and then paste that into Gemini, generate another deep research report, read through that, copy that, and then paste that back into ChatGPT, and process your thoughts a bit. And you can read these out loud on TikTok sometimes, and you can also read other research papers out loud on TikTok sometimes. You might notice some differences in tone between different types of papers. And you might notice different goals when there are different numbers of authors in different contexts on the papers. There are so many dimensions to the papers that you might read. I have appreciated being able to practice reading them on TikTok, and I appreciate reflecting on how I might update my website. Cheers! The laminated folios are effectively a non sequitur with respect to the computer science curriculum, and the point of the computer science curriculum is to introduce an amount of rigor that cannot be satisfied. Sometimes the software engineering interview process fixates on teaching computer science, which is a good idea, and it is impossible to teach someone all of computer science. So we need to be mindful to motivate the exploration of computer science without requiring an amount of depth that is humanly impossible or infeasible. The space can be interesting to explore, so people are going to explore it anyway. And we can explore art with computer science and provide channels for exploring specific details in specific ways. My goal is to practice the science of learning And I'm updating my personal site today to make it easier to explore the world that I've been building. Today, I asked both ChatGPT and Gemini for some deep research reports. I asked for some curricula for a 6-year master's program. So, I'm going to update my website to accommodate this curriculum, well, the synthesized curricula. Then, as I review my site, I will be wondering about the topics, the content. I'll be wondering about how it would feel to read it out loud, and I'll have reasons to update that. And for RPG Wednesday, there will be a reason that I can synthesize some sort of play direction. So even if nobody shows up, I'll be able to continue something. Cheers! I've already made a few thousand TikToks, and I've described the structures into credentials that are relevant in the context of my learning environment. So over the course of a few years, there are a few thousand TikToks that someone can watch, and now we have AI, and it's possible for someone to create a self-directed curriculum and learn somewhere. It's also possible for someone to consult Gemini on YouTube and summarize the videos that I've posted. And presumably, they could reflect on the timing and context, and someone who has a similar context can learn from mine. So that context exists, and I can continuously update the resources that I make available. And presumably, I would want to design a product that gains quality when the AI models gain quality. One of these projects or one of these products might be the quality of my website. And I also have these laminated folios that I've been developing to exist orthogonally to my computer science curriculum. So I know that I can increment the quality of my computer science curriculum, and I also have a product that can exist orthogonally. And that was an important dimension to test on TikTok over the past couple of years. Cheers! Some people are going to start their own businesses because they've lost their jobs, and sometimes they're going to want to build a website, which is possible, and it is also possible to spend an amount of time on a website that doesn't get you closer to your goals. There are ways that we can talk about the different types of goals that people tend to have with websites. This turns out to be one of the reasons why having years of experience is more relevant, but you also need to be able to describe that you have years of experience if you want to demonstrate years of experience as a credential. So this is one reason to go live on TikTok and talk about your skills for years on TikTok. So presumably you have at least as many followers as are required to go live, and you can also point to years of describing your skills. It is possible to open source your code, and someone can clone it, but you will have specific abilities to navigate software if you spend a lot of time practicing. So you will be able to spin up pages that people can navigate and also update them to be, well, up to date, accurate, relevant. A reason to hire me to build a website for you is the people who can navigate my websites can also navigate the websites that I create. And I can make your website more or less unique. There are web content accessibility guidelines, and those are relevant for making navigable web pages. We can also make web pages that work similarly to TikTok, and there are games that might be familiar based on the ones that TikTok makes available. We can design web pages based on the videos that we make, and it is possible for AI to summarize videos, And that might be one source of content on your website. There are a lot of options, and I would recommend getting started just so you can see what's possible. Cheers! I can animate my art if I subscribe to Supergrok for $30, and I can also ask Midjourney to interpret my art if I subscribe to Midjourney, and I would do that for for the $30 subscription. Development costs are about $50 to $200 per month, and generalized development is about $250 per month. And there are ways that I can add training stability for another 120 on top of that. So development, training, and assisted animation are about $500 per month. Assisted animation is necessary because while the other animation, unassisted animation, does happen, it's pretty slow and can not be necessarily as rewarding as having a finished product. Finding a balance between motivated production and automation and the ways it feels to believe we are where we are with technology has been challenging. It's been hard to find a balance between saying we can do a lot with technology and motivating the people who produce into that context. That's something that we're learning and something that we're practicing, and we can talk about it. And that's something that I hope to make more available with RPG Wednesday. So if you want to participate with that, make a character sheet. You can use a character sheet from another RPG just to be able to describe your character and what they tend to do. And on Wednesday, I'll probably work towards a structure in the morning and evening for making some dimension of gameplay accessible. And I recently updated my website for the May 13th session. In the meantime, I will be drawing and planning laminated folios. I'll be planning the new ones that I want to describe and start integrating some of the older ones into stories for future projects. Fundraising is necessary, and that will be a focus of production, and I've described that on my website. Cheers! Some things only happen if humans plan to make them happen, and we can wait for something to spontaneously be different, but usually that doesn't mean that things are spontaneously going to be different. Which is to say that we have the ability to plan and make actions towards our plans, and spontaneous actions are different. This is why organizations exist, so we can talk about the plans that we have and work towards them as groups of people. It is possible for groups of people to come together and talk about what they want to do and not make progress towards something in common. And it is also possible to hope that groups of people can form a coordinated direction that everyone is okay with. There are a lot of people who can be okay with a lot of things, and sometimes that can change the scope of quality maintenance. Sometimes abstractions can be confusing to people, and frustration can build up when abstraction seems too strong. We can provide examples for grounding. Cheers! It's been possible for a while to ask ChatGPT for a deep research report and then read through it and see which things make sense to you. And you've also been able to ask your friends if it makes sense to them. And one of the ways this has been possible has been through TikTok Live. You can have conversations about what you read and see what makes sense to you and talk about it. It's a good idea to know people who are professionals in specific fields because they can talk about their experiences and you can compare what you hear from a language model to what a professional might care about. An advantage of doing this isn't to fact check everything necessarily, it's just to see what's interesting. People who are professionals in their fields are going to find some information boring because that's beginner information to them. Other times they're going to find specific details more novel because of what it means for the capacities, etc. So it is a good idea to have conversations with people who are trying to increment their skills and are professionals in a capacity that they are working on maintaining. This is one reason to update a GitHub profile and talk about software and have a channel that describes an amount of depth. If you can competently navigate a TypeScript project and update multiple episodes of you working on that project, then you can describe a relationship to that reason. And later, it might be a good idea to work on a TypeScript project and a JavaScript project and be able to describe why either one might be what you chose for that project. In college, in my undergrad, the first time I'm looking to go back, finish a degree. So I'm going to say in my first undergrad experience, I founded an org called FactShift, a started a startup project. Now I'm considering that project to be my exploration of ground and what it means to form, explore, discover novel media. I want to be able to update my mind. I want to be able to learn new things. And I acknowledge that FactShift can sometimes be scary, or the concept can be intimidating. So, with that, I wanted to explore how to ground that concept. I already posted a version of the code base on GitHub, and I'm interested in exploring new interactions with it. Though a goal with that is to have the exploration be grounded and useful for continued motivated development. So as I tell the story of what I'm learning, can I motivate other people to also tell the story of what they're learning and also share a space that is productive, mind in context, aiming for intergenerational media literacy development, etc. Cheers. I've been making videos on TikTok describing how I practice software engineering and how I practice working with a team towards a production goal. I described this process so I can reflect on it when my videos resurface, and I also try to be mindful of the ways people describe wanting to relate to their own videos. Ideally, I'd be working within a realm that someone can imagine creating for themselves, or within one that someone has already navigated before. And I intend to point to book talk and intergenerational media literacy. Currently, I'm updating my website to make it easier for me to read my website and also learn something. I want to add people to my workspace, and it would cost money for me to do that. So I'm interested in having conversations with people about what we can build that could actually generate some income. And I already do have a team, and I need to talk with them. I need to have conversations about what we need and what stabilizes dimensions of cooperation. And that's true anyway. Having conversations about cooperation and being transparent about what we need is a dimension of what we have to do anyway. I make a lot of videos, and there are reasons why it would be difficult algorithmically for anyone to have seen all of my videos. I'm not sure how much context you have. Some of the context in some of my videos is more relevant as redundancy than others. Some concepts are more relevant for scaffolding than others. I hope to describe that I'm updating my website. I'm reflecting on the things that I want to reflect on when I update my website, and I intend to make a space where others can reflect on their own development. Pardon. I intend to create spaces where others can reflect on their own development and share updates with progress. And that's the reason that I work on RPG Wednesday every week. I'm exploring the culinary resonance dimension of my websites today. I want to make it easier for me to learn how to cook different things with my websites, and I want a reason to reflect on food mindfully towards the development of American cuisine. Cheers!